I'm recording.
Welcome back to another episode of the Sound Good podcast. I'm your host, Michael.
And I'm Micah.
And today we're going to be talking about the Tigran Hamasyan album, Mockroot, and the album by the Midnight known as Endless Summer. These are some pretty decent albums. We're going to go one by one on this one. I know it's a nice break from the nice hour-plus long episodes. So we will start off with Endless Summer. Endless Summer is the second album by the Los Angeles, California-based electronica dance music duo known as The Midnight. The album came out in 2016. I believe it seems to be independently released. I think they released it on their Bandcamp is how it came out. So, without further ado, that is the album I suggested Micah take a listen to this episode. So I will just go ahead and let him dive right in now.
Yeah, this was probably my favorite album that we've listened to for the podcast so far. I would say.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So, what did you like about it the most? I guess since you're not really a person who's really into, I guess you don't really listen to a lot of this music, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't really fit. I mean, if you would tell me that it was considered dance music or that this band writes dance music, I would be put off. But listening to it completely blind, it's one of the best sounding albums I've heard in a long time.
Yeah,
you know, because I don't really consider it dance music personally. It's just because it feels very smooth. If you did move, it would just be like very slow swaying to it.
I guess it's more like that synthwave and that synth pop kind of stuff. But yeah, definitely. So like what did anything stand out specifically on it that made you like it so much? Was it just the general style of the album that it was like kind of refreshing for you, or?
I think specifically just the synth tones that they use, probably.
Yeah. Like
and
in what tracks?
So yeah, right away, because it's supposed to be kind of 80s California aesthetic. You know what you're going to be in for almost immediately when the first track starts, Endless Summer, and it sounds as if a cassette's being put in, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
And the first, I don't know, the keyboards right after, like right at the start of Endless Summer, you know what I'm talking about? How it's kind of like a little arpeggiated thing. Yeah. I don't know, I can't describe it. I feel like I've seen some old VHS like tapes have theme music that starts out like that, but all the synth tones that they used throughout this album were just incredible. A lot of them did remind me of Rush from the 80s, specifically the album Power Windows, which is honestly my favorite album. I told you for a later episode to listen to a different Rush album, but if you ever have the time, you should totally check out Power. Like, if you like this kind of music, you should totally listen to Power Windows, because it's.
I don't think I've listened to that album by Rush.
It's really good, and some of the drums actually reminded me of like Genesis a little bit.
Genesis,
too,
like
but
like the
Phil Collins.
Okay, yeah, like the band Genesis. Duh.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, my mind went to
like the Bible.
No, for some reason, my mind went to Job for a Cowboy, but that's why I was like, "What?"
Yeah, what?
Yeah, no, totally. Just comparing a synthwave band to a technical death metal band, no big deal. So,
and another thing, the way that the male vocalist sings, a lot of his inflections actually reminded me of the way that the singer from Mess sings a tiny bit.
Oh yeah, just a little bit. Yeah, I can kind of see that. I guess
Like the kind of softness in the way that he ended words, I guess.
Yeah, I can see that. 100%. Sure. It's just kind of got that nice little like, not relaxed is not the word I'm looking for, but like that smooth, quiet ending, like you were saying. Yeah. Yeah. No, I feel that. For sure.
And it's like kind of lightly bouncy a little bit.
Yeah.
I guess. I don't know.
Definitely. So, like, were there any tracks on this album that stood out to you specifically that you want to maybe talk about or anything?
I think one of the first ones that stood out the most to me was Jason.
Yeah. That's that
with
one
that
that features Nikki Flores on it, right?
Yeah. I think mostly that one, it was a nice change from... Not that I was bored of him or anything, but you hear a new vocalist, and she was really good.
Yeah, I really like her vocal feature in that song. I also really just like that song as a whole, though. But I'm a slut for some good saxophone.
Yeah. So the other thing that made it one of my more standout tracks was that throughout most of the verses there is a little saxophone melody, and eventually you get a saxophone solo.
Oh man, they do such good saxophone solos. I love this group just for their saxophone solos, honestly.
I want to say there's only 2 tracks on this album that have saxophone, right?
I know
it's Jason, and then the other one is Vampires, I want to say.
Vampires does, yeah. I can't remember, honestly. I know that like a lot of the music I listen to from them has some saxophone in it somewhere. It has been a while since I've listened to this album specifically, though, so I'm not 100% sure on remembering.
Yeah, there's a few synth solos that maybe kind of took the line of like being mistaken for a sax, but I listened to it yesterday, and as far as I could tell, the only other time a saxophone came up was in Vampires towards the end of the album.
Yeah,
and so that's where one of the only complaints that I have. I'm not really a full smooth jazz person personally, and so I really loved the saxophone utilization in Jason because it was very intermittent with a solo towards the end. Cause that actually kind of reminded me of Another Day by Dream Theater a little bit, like the sentiment of that sax.
Exactly, yeah. That's exactly the vibe I got from it too when I first heard it. That's awesome. But
yeah, and so with Vampires, I didn't like it as much personally because instead of being kind of flavor text for the song, the sax was the main melody maker.
I feel it.
And so I kind of just got a little bit tired of it. And I was a little disappointed because I don't know, you probably don't remember if you haven't listened to it in a little bit. Vampires starts out like with a really cool fade in that I want to say Anne Berlin has done a few times, and they use it to kind of explode into a thing, like a big grandiose epic kind of thing. Like a but here
build up or something.
Yeah, or well, Anne Berlin a little more rock focused.
Yeah, I never listened to them, so
they're a pretty good treat, but they broke up.
Rip.
Yeah, that was one of those bands where I got into them and they broke up like one album later.
Don't you love that, dude? That's great.
But here it was the fade in with the synth, and then it doesn't really climb higher after that with the like it goes right into a sax part that kind of just feels at the same level instead of having escalated to something, you know. But it's still just really chill to listen to, you know.
Yeah, no, it's
like none of this is saying it was annoying to listen to or a bad song, just not as good as the others, maybe.
Right. So not as good as the others. So which tracks do you think like really stood out to you on this album then?
The one that stood out the most right away because it was so different from the other songs was Synthetic, for sure.
Synthetic?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a very vocal focused song, I guess, with a lot more. It was a lot more drum and vocal focused with the rhythm, I guess, instead of being focused on a synth melody.
Yeah.
because I don't know what type of song to compare it to.
It's its own thing, man.
No, because I want to say, like, it's not a ballad, but...
Are you talking like like song structure wise, what it sounds like?
Yeah, song structure / vocal lyric content. You know.
Oh, it's kind of it's one of those more self-introspective.
Like, yeah, 100%.
One of those introspective tracks, yeah, where it's kind of looking back.
And I feel like it's maybe one of the most poppy songs on the album too, though.
Yeah, I could see that.
Like, I feel like it would cater to a general audience a lot more.
I could see the Comeback Kid actually being like the most poppy song on the album, but I definitely see what you're saying though. Just because like
those are both the most poppy songs on the album. Reasoning, the Comeback Kid was the other favorite song I had.
My reasoning for Comeback Kid is just because it just sound like, to me, it just sounds poppy. Like, it sounds like something everybody could listen to and be like, yeah, this is okay. Like, this is all right. Yeah, like I would expect to hear that song on a radio probably more than anything else on this album, honestly.
Yeah, and I don't want to say that it's poppy in a way that someone like me would go, ew, poppy. Ew. Like, it's more, they just have the catchiest melody, like choruses and melodies, you know, as opposed to being just smooth synthwave.
Yeah, right, definitely. No, I do love this. I do love this group's ability to make endlessly catchy lyrics and riffs and just melodies and all that stuff. So I'm really glad they were able to do that on this album, and I think they did it pretty well on this album too. Everything kind of flows fairly smoothly, at least. So
this is definitely gonna be an album that if I'm just like sitting around doing stuff, I'll just throw it on because it's just really, and just this band in general, I'll throw them on.
Totally.
Yeah,
dude, it's good driving music. A 10 out of 10. Recommend it if you're driving ever.
Oh yeah, and that's a really fun point. They do a really good job, like, with the aesthetic. Cause, what album has shadows on it? Nocturnal. I mean, obviously the album art for that shows it off, but they do a really good job of writing music that feels like a movie where the only audio is the music, and it's just like neon city and cars going by.
It's that really good retro vibe.
Nice... It specifically feels like you're driving with no audio except the music.
Yeah.
The second album that we're going to talk about is Mockroot by Armenian pianist Tigran Hamasyan, released in 2015 on Non-Such Records. I recommended this album to Michael because I want to say 2 years ago, so about, I guess 2016, a year after the album came out, I saw that Jordan Rudess, the keyboardist for Dream Theater, put this on a list of his most recommended current keyboard-focused artists / albums, and I decided to check them out because Jordan's a good boy, and this was a very different album for me, and I guess I was very interested to see what Michael would think about it, since he's also a pretty big just prog guy and likes good synth. So yeah, how'd you feel about it, Michael?
It was definitely interesting. I will say that. I liked it a lot more than I thought I was going into it, knowing it was heavily piano focused, because I like piano music, but too much of it kind of wears on my brain. Like, it just kind of like gets boring really fast to me.
For sure.
And I don't know why, it just does. So going into this album, I was kind of like, okay. And I'm also not a really big fan of like piano used in an aggressive sense like it is on this album. Like, whenever I like the piano music I enjoy the most is like the really relaxing, kind of ambient almost.
Yeah.
So going into this, the opening track, which was To Love, I really liked that opening track. I like the vocals that he uses on this album. Do you know, does he sing
all the
his
male
vocals?
vocals are him singing. Yeah.
Okay, so like, so the vocals in "To Love" would be him then.
Yes.
That little vocal melody. Yeah, dude, I love his singing voice. That is like, honestly, without the vocals in a lot of these songs, a lot of the songs would have just been killed for me, because it is very weird. Like you said, it's proggy, so it's piano led, almost like gent. It's like imagine if you took a gent song and replaced all the guitars with a piano, which sounds so questionable, but he does it well enough to keep you interested for the full 58 minutes of the album, at least. There were a couple times, I can't remember exactly where on the album it was, but there was a few times that I felt like it got way too repetitive.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Honestly, that would be my only complaint about this album, is that it gets very repetitive a lot.
Some of the songs should have been shortened, for sure.
Yes. Like, I mean, and that's not saying the songs are too long, even. It's like the song average length is like 4.5, 5 minutes, save for the last song, which is 10.5 minutes. But I wish I could have enjoyed the album more, because Tigran Hamasyan has a ton of, like, it feels like virtuosic skill when it comes to his piano playing.
I was going to comment,
So,
I think that's where the aggressiveness from the piano kind of comes from.
Is like his virtuosity.
He seems a little less on the side of being a melodic, like, ambient piano player, you know?
Yeah, he's just like, his piano lines can be very pretty in ambient, though.
They can't.
Like I said, like "Into Love" and "In the Road That Brings Me Closer to You." Those were like my two favorite tracks off the entire album, and they're, like, for the most part, they're just very relaxing and very, not ambient, but they're very soft. They're very pretty tracks, and the vocals on "The Road That Brings Me Closer to You," "The Roads That Bring Me Closer to You," was actually one of my favorites, like, on the entire album too. And then you get songs like "Entertain Me" that are just like full on in your face, like bashing you with these piano chords with a running drum beat going underneath it. And it's like, it's a good, like, experiment, like foray into the more progressive, more, like I said, genty almost genre with a piano as the main instrument. And again, it's not like that's a bad thing. I am just not too much of a fan of the repetitiveness of the genty prog metal stuff like that. And I'm also not that big of a fan of, like, pianos being anything other than pretty and ambient, unless it's used very well. So this album kind of unfortunately took, like, two of my most hated things and, like, put them together. But it made up for it in a lot of spots, though, with the little pretty ambient tracks where he showed off more of his piano playing,
for sure,
rather than his songwriting.
And I feel
because
like,
I think,
yeah,
go ahead.
I don't know. I think the drums helped a lot too.
The drums did help a lot, keeping me interested. I will say that, because there's plenty of parts where the piano is just going like ba bum ba bum ba bum, and I'm just like, oh my god, how long is he gonna do this for, dude? But I mean, yeah, I don't know. Overall, it's a pretty solid album. This is probably an album I wouldn't just off the cuff recommend to somebody. Yeah. Like, I wouldn't be like, hey, have you ever heard of this guy, Tigran Hamasyan?
Yeah, who would ever recommend an album to somebody like that? That's weird.
But like, if I knew somebody who was into classical music, or who was into piano music, or, anything like that, or just really weird music, I would definitely be like, you might like this. Because it's, like I said, it's not terrible. It's just my personal tastes happened to clash hard with what this album is. And I really hate that, because I wanted to enjoy this album a lot, but unfortunately I could only really listen to it as background noise, because if I tried to listen hard to it, I got bored. It's not that I got bored for a lack of intricacy. I got bored for a lack of feeling almost. Because whenever I hear piano music, I'm expecting a lot of emotions and feeling to be coming up with it. And I only really got that on the quieter tracks, on the more pretty tracks, like I've been saying, like To Love and The Roads That Bring Me Closer to You. Mm-hmm. So it's like, yeah, tracks like Entertain Me just kind of, like Entertain Me and Double Face both kind of just like threw me off a little bit.
Yeah.
But songs like To Love, Song for Milan and Rafiq was good. The Cars songs were good. I don't know. It was a very hit or miss album with me. Overall, I think I want to say overall I enjoyed it for the most part, but only in the sense where if I had it on in the background, I was digging it.
True. Yeah.
It was really good background music for me, like while I was driving or doing whatever else I was doing. But yeah, listening hard into it, I couldn't keep focused. It almost felt like there was too much going on with how crazy he wanted to be on the piano and how crazy he wanted all the instrumentation to be. Mm-hmm. So but like I said though, overall I think it's a very cohesive and consistent album. It definitely shows off his skill with many up and down piano runs he does throughout a lot of songs. It almost seems like his fingers never stop moving.
Yeah.
Which it takes skill. This guy is not untalented by any means. He is a very talented musician. Just happens to not make music that I personally am foaming at the mouth over. You know what I mean?
Yeah. If you're a person who's into hardcore jazz and improv jazz, I think this album would be a little bit more for you, I would say.
Oh, yeah, like freeform jazz admirers, there you go. all 5 of you left in the world, there you go. This is a good album.
Yeah, just the people that are way more into the virtuosic, I guess would be the adjective for that, kind of music. And, since I'm a pretty big Jordan Rudess fan, I kind of do lean more on that side, but whenever the album does get more jazzy, it kind of loses me a little bit, personally.
Exactly.
But it's just, and I didn't recommend this album because I have some huge affinity for it. I just remembered hearing it, and it's just so different from anything that I've listened to. I thought it'd be interesting to hear what your take on it would be, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. It was definitely out of my realm of possibility for listening.
Because it's a three-piece.
I never would have.
It's a three-piece jazz with a lot of Armenian folk melodies.
Oh, yeah. That's something I wanted to touch on too. Like, yeah, because Tigran is Armenian or of Armenian descent, he includes a lot of what sounds like the traditional like vocal melodies and like note pickings he does. Mm-hmm. And I really dig that because it gives it a nice Middle Eastern feel almost a lot. I know Armenia is not like the Middle East, but it's close. It's like in between Russia and the Middle East or something.
You're gonna alienate our geographer demographic, dude.
Oh, whatever, man. But it's in that area though, and it gives me very strong, like I can almost hear, I feel like the way he picks the notes and the way he writes the music and how the vocals are picked and all that, the melodies are structured. Mm-hmm. I can definitely feel almost like I am hearing like I'm catching a glimpse of Armenian culture through this music almost.
Absolutely.
And I really dig that. I do like that a lot, that he is so capable he's so able to give that glimpse into that culture through this music. So I don't know, overall it's an okay album to me. If you like the more aggressive, repetitive, driving piano music, then you'd probably like this album. If you're somebody like me who focuses mostly on ambient and relaxing and pretty.
The purely
music.
piano breakdowns weren't relaxing to you?
No, God, no. But yeah, there's a couple tracks that are pretty and ambient and nice and chill, but for the most part, it's just it's a big old gent piano slog fest to me, man. Which I don't know.
Yeah,
I said, it's okay. It's not my thing.
Even from my experience with it, it says a lot that this album is about the same length. It's 3 minutes shorter than Endless Summer, but it feels so much longer.
Oh yeah. I think that was definitely one of my complaints too, is it felt so hard to get through.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you felt like you were listening to the same song for half an hour, and then you're like, oh shit, I'm on track 8.
But
yeah, so I mean that's all I got for it. Yeah. Alright, everybody. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Sounds Good podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you thought the comments were insightful. Always remember to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening. And we're now on iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube, obviously. So make sure you hit the subscribe wherever you can. Make sure to rate us and leave some reviews about us. It helps us get seen by other people trying to search out for podcasts. And we will have a new episode next week. Thanks.